My name is Daniel Pierce. I'm 67 years old, and I've been seeing the same Bigfoot in the mountains of northern Idaho since 1981. That's 43 years of regular encounters with a being I came to call Walker, because of the distinctive way he moved through the forest. For 4 decades, we shared a relationship built on mutual respect and careful distance. We observed each other. We coexisted. We understood boundaries. But on the night of November 8, 2023, everything changed. That night, Walker did something he'd never done in 43 years. He came to my home. He approached my door. And he spoke. Not in English, not in words exactly, but in a way I understood perfectly. And what he told me about my daughter, about something that was going to happen to her, something I couldn't prevent, has haunted me every single day since. Because he was right. 3 weeks after that night, my daughter Emma died. Exactly the way he said she would. And I've been left with a truth I can't process, a knowledge I can't explain, and a grief that's tangled up with impossible questions about how he knew, why he told me, and what it means that a creature we classify as animal demonstrated consciousness, foresight, and compassion that I still can't fully comprehend. This is part 2 of my story. If you haven't watched part 1, you need to. Because what I'm about to tell you builds on 43 years of relationship, of trust built slowly over decades, of learning to communicate across a divide that shouldn't be crossable. Without that context, what happened on November 8th won't make sense. But with it, it becomes one of the most profound and devastating experiences of my life. Before I continue, I need you to do something. Hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Part 1 of this story has reached thousands of people, and many of you have been asking for the rest. This is it. This is what happened. And I need it documented because what Walker showed me that night changed everything I understand about consciousness, about knowledge, about the boundaries between species. Please, help this reach the people who need to hear it. Let me start by catching you up on where part 1 ended. For 43 years, from 1981 to 2023, I had regular encounters with Walker in the mountains near my property in northern Idaho. I'd see him maybe once or twice a month, always at a respectful distance, always with clear boundaries. We developed a kind of protocol. I'd leave offerings, fruit and vegetables from my garden at specific locations. He'd accept them and sometimes leave things in return. Arrange stones. Interesting branches. Once, a bird's nest so perfectly intact it must have been collected with incredible care. We never had direct contact. Never closer than maybe 50 feet. That was the agreement, unspoken but absolutely clear. I respected his space. He respected mine. It worked for over 4 decades. My daughter Emma knew about Walker. She'd grown up hearing my stories, had seen evidence herself on hikes, believed me completely even when others dismissed it as delusion. Emma was 39 years old in 2023, living in Spokane, working as a pediatric nurse. She had 2 kids, my grandchildren, ages 8 and 6. She'd visit me once or twice a month, always asking if I'd seen Walker recently, always fascinated by this ongoing relationship with a being that shouldn't exist. In October 2023, Emma started having health problems. Headaches, dizziness, fatigue. She went to her doctor, got basic tests done. Everything came back normal. They told her it was probably stress, recommended rest, hydration, maybe some time off work. But the symptoms got worse. By early November, she was having episodes where she'd lose her balance, where her vision would blur. She scheduled an MRI for November 30th. Her doctors were starting to suspect something neurological, but weren't alarmed yet. These things take time to diagnose. I talked to her on November 7th. She sounded tired, but optimistic. Said she was probably just run down, working too many shifts, not sleeping enough. She was taking a few days off before the MRI, planning to rest and let her body recover. That was the last normal conversation we had. The last time Emma sounded like herself. Because the next night, everything changed. November 8th, 2023. It was a Wednesday. Cold night. Temperature in the low 30s, clear sky, nearly full moon. I was in my cabin, reading, fire going in the wood stove. About 9 p.m., I heard something outside. Heavy footsteps on my porch. Deliberate. Purposeful. I knew immediately it wasn't a person. The weight was wrong. The rhythm was wrong. I looked out the window, and my heart stopped. Walker was standing on my porch. Not at the edge of my property where our encounters usually happened. On my porch, maybe 10 feet from my door. In 43 years, he'd never come this close to my home. Never violated that boundary. Something was wrong. Something had to be desperately wrong for him to cross that line. I opened the door slowly. Stood in the doorway. Walker was maybe 8 feet tall now. Had been growing slowly over the decades I'd known him. His fur was darker than it used to be, streaked with gray around the face and shoulders. Old. We were both getting old. He looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Distress. Urgency. Sorrow. He was trying to tell me something important and didn't know how. Then he did something extraordinary. He reached into a pouch he was carrying, something woven from plant fiber that I'd never seen him use before, and pulled out an object. He held it out to me, arm extended, clearly offering it. I stepped forward carefully, hand shaking, and took it. It was a small carving, made from wood, worn smooth with age and handling. A female figure. Simple. Abstract. But unmistakably female. And around the figure's head, carved lines. Radiating lines. Like pain. Like something wrong inside the head. I looked at Walker, not understanding. He pointed at the carving, then pointed at me, then made a gesture, pressing both hands to his chest, then extending them toward me. Grief. He was expressing grief. For me. Then he did something that changed everything. He opened his mouth and forced sounds through a throat that wasn't designed for human speech. Guttural. Strained. But unmistakable. Daughter. Daughter. He was saying daughter. My hands went numb. Emma. I whispered. You're talking about Emma? He nodded. Actual nodding. Clear affirmation. Then he pointed to his head. Tapped his skull. Pointed to the carving again. To those radiating lines around the head. Something's wrong with her head? I said. Something's wrong with Emma's head? He nodded again. Then made a gesture I'll never forget. He brought his hands together in front of his chest. Fingers interlaced. Then pulled them apart suddenly. Breaking. Coming apart. She's going to die, I said. It wasn't a question. I knew. Somehow, I knew that's what he was telling me. Emma's going to die. Soon. Walker's expression, I don't have words for it. Profound sadness. Empathy. He was telling me my daughter was going to die, and he was genuinely sorrowful about it. This being that we classify as an animal was demonstrating emotional depth and moral consciousness that most humans never achieve. He stepped forward then, breaking the last boundary we'd maintained for 43 years. Reached out with one massive hand and gently, so gently, touched my shoulder. The gesture was universal. Comfort. Condolence. Shared grief. Then he made more sounds. Forced more words through that impossible throat. So, can't stop. Sorry. Can't stop. He was apologizing. Telling me he couldn't prevent what was coming. That all he could do was warn me. Why? I asked, tears streaming down my face. How do you know this? How can you possibly know this? But he couldn't answer. Or wouldn't. Or didn't have the words. He just stood there for another moment, hand on my shoulder, looking at me with those ancient, intelligent eyes. Then he turned and walked away, back into the forest, disappearing into the moonlit trees. I stood on my porch holding that carving, shaking, trying to process what had just happened. A Bigfoot had come to my home and told me my daughter was going to die. Had spoken. Had expressed empathy. Had tried to prepare me for loss he somehow knew was coming. I called Emma immediately. She answered on the third ring, voice groggy. Dad? It's 9:30. What's wrong? Emma, I need you to go to the emergency room. Right now. Tonight. What? Why? Dad, I'm fine. I'm just tired. Please, honey. Please just trust me. Something's wrong. Something serious. You need to get checked now. Not wait for the MRI. Now. Dad, you're scaring me. What happened? I couldn't tell her. Couldn't say that Bigfoot had warned me she was dying. She'd think I'd lost my mind. So I lied. I had a dream. A really vivid, terrifying dream about you. About your head. Please, Emma. Just humor your paranoid father. Go get checked out. She heard the fear in my voice. Agreed to go, mostly to calm me down. Her husband drove her to the ER in Spokane. They did a CT scan. Found a brain aneurysm. Large. Unstable. In a location that made surgery extremely risky. The neurosurgeon told her she needed immediate intervention, but the aneurysm was in a place that made it inoperable without significant risk of catastrophic bleeding. They could try endovascular treatment, threading a catheter through her blood vessels to reinforce the aneurysm. But the chance of success was maybe 60%. The chance of the procedure itself causing the aneurysm to rupture was 40%. Emma chose to try. She was 39 years old with 2 young children. She had to try. The procedure was scheduled for November 29th, 3 weeks away. The safest window based on the aneurysm's current state and the surgical team's availability. Emma went home to wait, on strict orders to avoid any stress, any exertion, anything that might cause blood pressure spikes. I visited her every day during those 3 weeks. Watched her with her kids. Watched her laugh and play and try to pretend everything was normal. Watched her be a mother while knowing that she might not be there to see her children grow up. And every night I looked at that wooden carving Walker had given me. The female figure with pain radiating from her head. And I wondered how he knew. How he could possibly have known what was wrong with Emma when her doctors hadn't even diagnosed it yet. How he knew it was serious enough to warrant breaking 43 years of maintained boundaries to warn me. November 29th arrived. Emma went into surgery at 7 a.m. The procedure took 4 hours. For 4 hours, I sat in that waiting room holding the carving, praying to whatever gods might listen, hoping that Walker was wrong, that his warning was somehow mistaken. At 11:15 a.m., the surgeon came out. His face told me everything before he said a word. The aneurysm had ruptured during the procedure. They tried to stop the bleeding, tried everything, but the location was too difficult, the damage too severe. Emma had died on the table at 11:03 a.m. 3 weeks, and 1 day after Walker warned me it would happen. I've spent the last 8 months trying to understand this, trying to make sense of how Walker knew. What kind of consciousness, what kind of perception allows a being to know that another being, a being from a different species, a being he'd only seen occasionally over the years, was going to die from an invisible condition that medical science hadn't even detected yet? I've researched everything I can find about animal perception. Dogs that can detect cancer. Elephants that sense earthquakes before they happen. Animals that seem to know when disasters are coming. But this wasn't that. This wasn't detecting something wrong in the moment. This was foreknowledge. This was understanding a medical condition well enough to know it was fatal, and caring enough about a human family to warn them. I've gone back to the mountains many times since Emma died. Left offerings at our usual spots. Looked for signs of Walker. I've only seen him twice in 8 months. Both times at a distance. Both times, when he saw me, he stopped. Placed his hand over his heart, bowed his head, acknowledging shared grief, then disappeared back into the forest. He's mourning with me. A Bigfoot is mourning the death of my human daughter, carrying grief for a loss that affects my family, demonstrating empathy and emotional depth that challenges everything we think we know about consciousness and intelligence. I've shown the carving to a few people I trust. One of them, an anthropologist I know through mutual friends, examined it carefully. She said based on the wear patterns and the tool marks, it's at least 100 years old. Maybe older. Which means Walker didn't make it for Emma. He had it, carried it, kept it for who knows how long. And when he knew Emma was dying, he chose to give it to me as a symbol, as a way to communicate what he couldn't say with words. That suggests planning, foresight, understanding of symbolic communication, cultural knowledge passed down through generations. Because where did he get that carving? Who made it? How long has his kind been observing human death and creating symbols to mark it. I've talked to tribal elders from the Coeur d'Alene and Nez Perce nations. Shared what happened. Several of them nodded like this wasn't surprising at all. They told me stories passed down through their oral traditions. Stories about the forest people, as they call them, who sometimes warn humans of danger, who understand death, who share grief with those they've watched over for years. One elder told me, they see time differently than we do. Not past, present, future like us. More like everything at once. They see patterns, paths, probabilities. When they know someone well, watch them for years, they can see which path that person is on. See where it leads. And sometimes, when they care, they try to warn. But they can't change it. Only witness it. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if Walker sees time differently, or if he just has senses we don't understand. Ways of perceiving illness and injury that seem like precognition, but are actually just enhanced perception. I don't know how he knew. But I know what he did. He came to my home. He broke every boundary we'd maintained for 4 decades. He forced sounds through a throat not designed for speech to tell me my daughter was dying. He gave me a sacred object, something old and meaningful, as both warning and comfort. And he's mourned with me in the months since. That's not animal behavior. That's not instinct or conditioning. That's consciousness. That's empathy. That's moral reasoning and emotional depth that demands we reconsider everything we think we know about intelligence, about personhood, about the boundaries between human and non-human. Emma is gone. The warning didn't save her. Medical science couldn't save her. Walker couldn't save her. All he could do was prepare me. Give me 3 weeks to say goodbye. 3 weeks to make sure Emma knew she was loved. 3 weeks to tell her everything that mattered. Without Walker's warning, I wouldn't have pushed Emma to go to the ER that night. The aneurysm wouldn't have been discovered. She would have died suddenly, without warning, probably at home with her kids. Her children would have found their mother dead. That's the path she was on. Instead, because of Walker's warning, we had 3 weeks. Emma got to prepare her children as much as anyone can prepare children for losing their mother. Got to say goodbye to everyone she loved. Got to choose to try treatment rather than just waiting for the inevitable rupture. Walker couldn't save her, but he gave us time. He gave us the gift of preparation. And he did it despite having no obligation to us, despite the risk it posed to his own secrecy and safety, because 43 years of observation had created a connection. Because he'd watched Emma grow up through the years when she'd visit me. Because he cared. I'm 67 years old. I've lost my wife and now my daughter. I have grandchildren who ask me why their mother had to die. And I have a wooden carving 100 years old or more that a Bigfoot gave me as condolence for a death he saw coming when human doctors couldn't. What does that mean? What does it tell us about consciousness? About the limits of what we consider personhood? About how many other species might be operating at levels of awareness and emotional complexity we've never acknowledged, because we've never looked carefully enough. Walker is still out there, still in those mountains, still living a life that intersects with mine in ways I'm only beginning to understand. And I believe there are others like him all across North America, living in the margins of human awareness, watching us, sometimes caring about us in ways we'd never expect. Emma's death broke me. I won't lie about that. But Walker's warning, his gesture of comfort, his shared grief, all of it has given me something to hold on to. The knowledge that even in loss, even in death, there are connections that transcend species. That empathy and compassion exist in forms we've been too blind to see. I'm telling this story because people need to know. Need to understand that the boundaries we draw between human and animal are arbitrary. That consciousness exists in many forms. That beings we've dismissed as myths are watching us, understanding us, sometimes even caring about us in ways that should humble us completely. Walker spoke about my daughter. In his own way, with sounds forced through a throat not meant for speech, he told me she was dying. And that act of compassion, that crossing of 43 years of boundaries to prepare me for unbearable loss, Changed everything I understand about what it means to be conscious, to be aware, to be capable of empathy. Emma is gone, but the message Walker gave me remains. Intelligence, consciousness, and compassion exist beyond the boundaries we've drawn. And we owe it to beings like Walker to acknowledge them, to respect them, to recognize that we share this world with other minds, other hearts, other ways of being that deserve recognition. Hit like, subscribe, share this story. Because part 2 isn't just about warning and loss. It's about connection, about the bridges that can exist between species when we're humble enough to recognize consciousness in forms we didn't expect. Thank you for listening. Thank you for witnessing. And if you encounter something in the wilderness that seems to see you, to understand you, to recognize you as something more than prey or threat, consider that you might be in the presence of another kind of person. One who's been watching us far longer than we've been watching them. Walker is still out there, still watching, still carrying grief for my daughter. And somehow, knowing that makes the loss a little more bearable. Because even in death, Emma was seen, was recognized, was mourned by a being who didn't have to care, but chose to anyway. That's what consciousness looks like when it crosses the boundaries we think exist. That's what empathy looks like when it emerges from the forest and touches human lives with impossible gentleness. That's what Walker showed me. And that's what I'll carry for the rest of my life.